Everybody having a good time? So this is, so I don't know if they're going to be able to get that going. I think shortly after this, at some point, Paul's going to have to head back home to
we found a bad socket. We found a problem.
Found it? Okay.
So it's one of those things that's, you know, you got thousands of connections. We've got sockets, so it's easy to change the chip out. But suddenly, magically, the socket's bad in the worst possible place, and it's like, yeah. Because we literally ran this motor last night, working to perfection, battery cycling perfect. All we had to do was move it, vibrate it, and now it's got a bad socket. So that's what happens with ancient boards that have been through, 3 world wars and, 10,000 dead soldiers have been on and off that board. And so we apologize for that. Life got in the way of getting the new switch, which was the intention, but we'll keep you all posted on the progress. So that's one of my projects when I get back home, is to finish that switch. So I get kind of a week behind because life does that to you, So that's how it was. So, but it is totally functional and working. And this prototype has proven it once again. Every time we build one, we get better and better. This is a pre-production prototype. We haven't done the generator testing, so we've been very conservative bringing it up. When we get it fully ready to go on the new powerful switches designed to run this thing, you will get the results posted. You'll all be amazed. This is it's an incredibly simple technology. As you look at this, I've been full circle from, Peter can tell you, I have one of my first prototypes in my shop. I mean, building it was one thing, making it work was another. Incredibly complex switching. It works great, push-pull system. And now it's like 400 times more complex than this one. And I'll take this one any day because we've come full circle to complexity, back to simplicity. Once everybody got onto what John was really saying, how to, it's all about time-space manipulation. That's what all these machines do. They all have certain commonalities, and every machine that works, you will find broken magnetic paths where it forces magnetism into space, and if it doesn't have that factor to it, it will never work. Every machine that works is an open-end magnetic path. That's why the air coils are so great, because they put field out in space. And if you read Harold Aspen, he will show it to you mathematically in such precise, simple mathematical equations with proof that are 99.99% accurate. I cannot tell you enough. If you want to do new mathematics, that's the place to start. Leave the old physics books behind. You got to beat that stuff out of your head. This thing called entropy, this thing called the laws of thermodynamics cannot poorly understood by science. So many things that you can deal with it. You're looking at bent laws of thermodynamics, bent laws of entropy, bent laws. A magnet hanging on the refrigerator undermines all of modern physics. And I can't tell you how many times they've taken a paperclip and a magnet with the professional skeptics, and boom, that wasn't energy. Here's a simple thing. Do magnets cause acceleration? Of course they do. And acceleration, there is no such thing without energy behind this. No such thing as acceleration without energy. So tell me, how does that paperclip go faster, slam into that magnet? It makes noise you can hear. It defies gravity, jumps up, slams. If that magnet's hanging on a steel ceiling, just like the helicopter, it doesn't defy gravity without expending energy. And that's the whole thing about magnets. That simple fact undermines all of physics, because modern physics starts with electromagnetism. the definition is wrong out of the chute. So what do you think the results are from there on? And I can't tell you, Brown's gas, no heat, light, melting, dissemination, smoke, a 9,000 degree type temperature with tungsten, but yet you can hang on it. So when you explain that to it, you go, where did the heat go? Ignored into existence. Ignored. That's how it works. I've dealt with the physics community. Guys like Bob Hardwick are different. And he can tell you stories every day about how he gets snubbed by all his colleagues because he dares look into Maxwell. He dares, what does intention have to do with mass? All these things, they ignore you. It's like the la 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 la.
So let's go through going over the common denominator of who's up at the table here. And, you know, throughout the weekend, we know that everybody has contributed some really incredible and fascinating presentations that I'd encourage you to watch over and over. And as you can see here, Paul has been working with Mike on a motor. Mark McKay has been studying the gray motor technology for many years. Sky has been working with the Bork engines for many years, researching it. And so that's kind of the common denominator, is that these are some prime movers. I'm just trying to kind of group the panel discussion into a logical category. And after this one, there'll be one that kind of focuses on kind of the Tesla stuff with Hakasez, Griffin, Adrian, Parker, and myself. And then the last one, there will be Victor with the deuterium depleted water, Bruce, if he's available, for the stellar transformer concepts, Jennifer with off the grid, and Peter with the solar. The solar, the off the grid and deuterium depleted water aren't necessarily, you know, there's a few steps. They're at the same conference, and but that's the only way I could make it work. So that's kind of what we have lined up. But with everything you've learned about these gentlemen over the weekend here with Paul, Sky, Mark, and Mike, please give them all a round of applause for all their contributions and hard work. And before I forget, at the end of the day, I want to give some people some credit for making this happen, this conference, which I almost thought wouldn't happen because we're in a transition moving into the shop, and it didn't look like Hayden Coeur d'Alene area was very doable. First of all, one of my partners, Jeff Moe, who's a lot of this equipment over here that you see along this wall over here is his machine shop setup that we kind of moved over to make more room. And he's been working with building the MWOs basically since the beginning, from the early prototype stage, working with Eric and all the way up into the present time. We're constantly making refinements and everything. So there's Jeff Moe in the back. He can raise his hand. And then Troy is our employee who has taken the bull by the horns and has really helped to give us a real a timeline that is more doable with the MWOs. It's a very difficult project. He kind of keeps himself in his locked up room over there, and he just puts his nose to the grindstone. But he helped out with the conference. He's not here, but we want to give him a warm round of applause, because without him we'd be severely behind, and it looks like we're going to be able to keep on track. So give it up for Troy. And then is Yari in the room? So Yari, one of my best friends going back to the early 90s. He was one of the first ones I met after I came back from Japan, and he's been up here, 3 times this year. So I've been flying him up, and he's been helping us with the shop setup, the shop move, everything else. Come up here to help set up for the conference, and also to help with the shop. He was up at 4:30 to take Dr. Reiner and Michael Hobson and Robert Herlick to the airport. At 4:30, came here at maybe, I don't know, 5 to 6 or something like that, so that Adrian can have some of his experiments video recorded by Eric. So he's been up all night, or didn't get much sleep because I was up with him late, and he was out before the sun came up trying to make this happen. So give it up for Yari there. does what it takes. And then Eric on video, he's, this is I think the third year that you've done the video for us. This is second year, okay. Second year doing the video presentations. We're able to get them out faster and faster because he's doing the live switching between the PowerPoints. We don't have to do this 2-camera stuff that I have to watch every minute and go through it. So we'll probably set a record that all these videos should be able to get out in just a week or two.
48 hours.
48 hours, I'll have them, and then I'll be releasing them maybe about once a day, once every other day as I can, because we have to put the description on the website, make the graphics, this kind of stuff. So give Eric a round of applause, and also for handling all the live streaming. And then we have Bruce, who's been coming to the conferences for a long time, and he's been helping me with audio for the last few years at Hayden Eagles. I don't know if you've been to some of the conferences there, but I did so much myself. I literally did the work of probably a team of 7 or 8 people organizing the conference. You know, everything from booking flights to managing the venue and getting it set up. And I'm in the back of the room and somebody says, sound. I come running out of the bar up to the front to do something on the soundboard, and I run back to the room. I mean, literally, that's how it was. I did virtually every single thing possible other than filming it. And so Bruce has made my life easier. The last couple of conferences, little by little, have become more enjoyable for me. Not that I didn't enjoy them when they're more stressful, but having less to do and where I can kind of focus on enjoying it a lot more has made my life easier. So thank you, Bruce. Keep it up for Bruce. Is there anybody else that I'm missing? Because that's kind of the main, I think, kind of the main core that has helped put this on. And then Simon Davies in the UK, he lives in Wales. I think he's probably streaming in live right now. He helps me with all the customer service by email, the contact us page stuff through eMedia Press, a lot of the graphics. His site is Tesla Scientific, so make sure you check that out. But we want to give Simon a round of applause because of all the help, and without him, I would be way behind on a lot of the web stuff and everything else going on behind the scenes. So give it up for Simon. And so to kick it off, Paul gave some feedback on just the trials and going through the motor stuff with the RPG motor. And I watched this up close. I go to Paul's shop quite a bit, and I've seen what it takes behind the scenes to do this stuff. And with my own experience, thankfully he turned me on to some more automated processes, getting the circuit boards done and that kind of thing that made my life easier. And took a little while, and Paul helped put together the signal generator circuit that's in the RPX. And when he pointed out the case with the little slots to slide the PC board in, I'm thinking, all right, I got to learn another skill set. And I had to wrap my head around that a little bit, took a look at it, and figure it out. I mean, you just get committed to a project, and you look at concepts of like what's in Think and Grow Rich, those kind of things. It's not a get rich quick kind of book. I'd recommend everybody read it if you want to be successful in anything, and you don't need to keep hopping from success book to success book like a heroin junkie. And that's what a lot of people do, is it's the next book and the next book looking for the magic answer. I memorized chapters at a time, word for word, and I used to repeat it to myself driving down the highway just to internalize it as fast as possible. But in that, you can sum the whole thing up as its commitment to completion. And that's all it is, and you're willing to just do what it takes until it's done, and that's all there is to it. There's no other option, and failure is not an option. And that's the kind of attitude that it takes to be able to be in this field with thick rhino skin, because you get kind of kicked around a little bit. And that's the kind of attitude that I would encourage everybody to take on, is just get that thick rhino skin, because that's really what it takes. And everybody here is going to tell you the same thing. Do you have any kind of opening comments that you want to start with, Sky, on anything? And then after a lot of these panel discussions, if you haven't been here before, is please come up to the mic, and this is just random Q&A. Anything that we didn't cover in the presentations or anything else, anything about them personally, where they're going with the work, please come up to the mic and ask questions. And if you're streaming in, just type them in. So go ahead, Sky.
Well, the first thing I can say is very, very nice to be in a room full of so many people, so much more intelligent than myself.
Well, Sky is pretty damn smart. If you see what he's into. He's one of the most dedicated researchers that he's going to get to the answers. And so what's your next steps? Let's go on with that. What's your next step?
So right now, like I said, we are working on a new topology. In addition to the Burke engine, the Burke engine is still very good for all displacements 1,000 cc and below. But right now we're working on trying to develop and commercialize a new topology because we have figured out how to pack in the same weight and in the same size as that Burke engine, which is 30 cubic inches. We have figured out how to fit 341 cubic inches in the same size and make it uniflow scavenged, which means it'll have a higher volumetric efficiency than any four-stroke engine on the planet. That Burke engine is a cross-flow overhead deflector head design. Garbage. Uniflow scavenging is the most efficient methodology of scavenging any engine ever discovered by man, and I do not think that you can find a better methodology to do it. And with this new design, which is a post-piston, uniflow scavenged, and maximizes the square cube law to give it the highest displacement for a given size and power to weight ratio possible, we are going to really do something really special. And once we perfect it as a chemical engine, which is going to take 20 years in and of itself, commercializing it and scaling up the company, I would like to invest some time and money towards a deuterium and plutonium microparticle fuel mix to make a nuclear pulse detonation engine. So rather than an engine powered by chemical explosions, it will be an engine powered by nuclear detonation. Probably not going to work, but it's worth a shot.
But Russell Bork did go into the Bork Engine documentary compilation of some of these actual processes, so it's...
It is not my idea, I must say. Russell Bork, it was suggested to him by a physicist a long time ago, this was back in the late 30s, that you could place an atomic pile at each end of a cylinder of a very, very large engine and create an internal nuclear engine, an internal gas-charged nuclear engine. Of course, the topology that we're pursuing would actually allow us to use a plutonium microparticle and deuterium or helium gas mix, your choice. Now, this fuel and this idea is not my idea entirely. The University of Florida did a lot of research into creating a nuclear piston engine back in the 1970s, and they were using a thermal spectrum thermal spectrum reactor using graphite pistons and graphite cylinders to act as a moderator to convert the fast neutrons into thermal spectrum neutrons. However, with modern designs and modern engineering, we could use stainless steel, such as 316 stainless steel, and create a fast spectrum reactor that would go momentarily supercritical, and that offers a lot of benefits, certainly with a total obviation of nuclear waste. Once you go into momentary supercritical, you're going to burn up a lot of your actinide and lanthanide group elements that don't get burned up in a conventional regular reactor that only reaches critical mass. So there's some advantages, but the biggest advantage, of course, is with a nuclear engine is you could run the thing in space. You could get megawatts of power on tap in a spaceship. I think that's in a compact package that's smaller than this table. So I think that that could be valuable.
Scott, you're talking about, the amount of horsepower you could, to run this in a conventional truck or anything like that. We were talking about that the other day when you tell them about that.
So on one of this new topology we're experimenting with, the nominal size is 13 inches wide, 20 inches tall, and 50 inches long. And conservatively, that should, at 3,600 RPM, this design can spool up to 20,000 RPM and produce far more power than even this. But at 3,600 RPM, which is generator head speed, should be able to produce at least 8,000 horsepower.
And using how much, using the fuel economy aspect of it. We're getting all that power.
I mean, the fuel economy really depends on how well our hydrosonic cavitator and our, supercritical fluid, catalyst systems work, which effectively work by breaking down fuel into monatomic free hydrogen and carbon monoxide and methane. And if we can really use catalysts to really reduce how much energy it takes to vaporize and crack and shorten fuel, we could see an increase in fuel economy by a factor of 10, what was previously thought to be impossible by stripping hydrogen atoms from water catalytically or pseudo-catalytically. So miles per gallon out of, an 18-wheeler could be as high as 70 miles to the gallon or greater. Of course, that's very hopeful and ambitious, but 20 miles to the gallon is certainly doable with current technology that we have available to us right now, which out of an 18-wheeler is pretty good.
I would encourage everybody who's interested in engine technologies to read the Bork engine documentary. There's a copy of it on energeticforum.com that you can get, or emediapress.com. And in that book, anybody interested in Stan Meyer, when I read it, I think Stan Meyer was inspired to create his ammonia fuel process by slowing down the burn rate of the HHO gas by mixing it with nitrogen from Russell Bork. I think that's where it came from, and I think if you've studied both, you might come to the same conclusion. Kind of got to read between the lines, but there's enough little things there that kind of make sense. So
You've touched upon something very interesting. So I've read, over the last 10 years, I've read over 500 books on building and designing and engineering chemical prime movers. And after about the 150th book, I started noticing that a lot of these books contradicted themselves, each other, and sometimes within the same book I've noticed contradictions. So I've kind of had to create my own weird little model of, I guess, prime mover design principles to really move forward and advance the field. But ultimately, the axioms that conventional piston engines are designed upon, which is you can't detonate the fuel, you don't want to preheat the incoming air and fuel, right? These are wrong axioms, and I think the turbine engineers are axioms and first principles are a lot more correct to reality than the piston engines engineers. And I'm looking to do what the turbine engineers do and apply it to piston topology, because pistons have a lot of unique advantages that turbines don't, such as, well, for one, they're a lot cheaper to manufacture. And secondly, they, when done correctly, they can have a much wider RPM band. Their useful RPM band is very, very wide. I mean, people talk about, narrow RPM bands. Turbines are narrow as a piece of paper in terms of their power curves, and outside of that, their efficiency is. So piston engines have a lot of unique advantages, and if we could take the mathematical formulae and the principles that the turbine engineers have known for a century now and apply it to piston topology, I think we can really combine the best of both worlds and start breaking the 60% efficiency barriers in small packages.
So Mark, where are you going with everything in the gray motor research? You have some experiments currently going on?
Let me tell you.
Or any new leads to any?
Well, it's been a very fruitful experience here. I'm going to go online and buy me some of these power MOSFETs that Paul recommended from onsemi. And I'm going to go back home and build me some popping coils using iron wire and some measurements and some new ideas and concepts, and have a gay old time.
Not killing soldiers. Fuck it up with dead transistors, you're not doing it right. It's not R&D.
Well, $35 a piece. I'm kind of limited.
Yeah, but it's all about what you pay for what you get.
Well, Social Security is going to pay for quite a few of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you want to know?
What's the next steps with this?
Well,
I mean, I kinda
the
know.
thing of it is trying to get this package ready for this year has been a stress for sure. It's been great to see the success we've had. I understand today sucked that way, but overall that thing has been such a success story. And the way it runs and how quiet it is and how much power, how much energy we're getting out of it, it's phenomenal. So it's awesome to be able to do that. But where we need to go from here is we need to refine our case, we need to refine our production process, and I don't see too much in our way, to be honest with you.
The torturous interference, but when have we not had that? So
Yeah, so it's like we're right there and Lucy doesn't have time to pull the football out of the way. We're kicking the goal. So I think that's where we're at. And honestly, I think that it's a matter now of just, this is it. We can build it. Let's do it, and it'll be for sale.
Right. And I can vouch for these guys, over at Paul's shop. He had me doing some microsurgery on one of these switching circuit boards.
Yeah.
And so I got a crash course in scraping traces and how to bypass stuff and all that. And
Yeah, Paul
So it's-
sent me a picture and
Oh, no.
showed me the emergency room the technicians all in there, and Aaron was working
Yeah.
away.
My arm's been a little wounded, man. Kind of coming back. I said, Aaron, my arm doesn't work. You volunteered, man, and saved the day. We got things tested and put back together, and so I got to say this. So with the RPX design, and Aaron and I have been working very closely to get products up to better standards. It's a boutique electronic kind of concept. So the RPX design, we worked on that about a year and a half, coming up with the circuits, beating it to death to make sure they were commercially ready, and then you got to do, so it's been kind of a process of teaching Aaron about how to take what you have out of the prototype stage to full commercial ready products. And it's not an easy task under the best of circumstances. Electronics is complicated these days, so there's tremendous amount of research and hours into getting that RPX, knowing what the user needed, getting, because I've been using the RPXs for years for various experiments, and boy, the old system worked, but it was clunky, the cables and the batteries and I can't tell you how many times, would you come reprogram my signal generator? So it was about getting some affordable circuitry where it had the profit margin in it to keep all of this alive. Product sales is how all this works. So taking my 30 years experience and having a good student like Aaron, he's very capable of designing and making products ready to go for you guys. This RPX is actually a truly unique piece of art, completely functional, as good as Rife ever did. And the little freaking package, simplified down for the user, and there was just 4 or 5 years of using it, refining it. I can't tell you how many hours we have in that thing, but that's the teamwork.
so I'll share a little bit about where I'm going with some of this stuff. So I've been really wanting to put this plasma ignition into production for a while. I mean, there's a lot of companies that make capacitive discharge units, but I'm tired of sending them customers. And so I want to develop my own capacitor discharge unit and a little diode retrofit kit. There's with the plasma ignition cap discharge, or with the cap discharge module, there's a certain application for that has nothing to do with the ignition systems for engines. I don't want to say anything about it right now because I still have to test it out, but it's something that Eric wanted me to put together. Eric Dollard wanted me to put together. Once those tests are successful, and I already know what the outcome is going to be because it's obvious, I'll put the word out there about it, show some videos and stuff, and we'll make that available. And the secondary application of it is going to be retrofit ignition system for older cars. So if you have any kind of engine that has one of these old style ignition coils, that's the easiest one to kind of retrofit to put the plasma ignition on. I've put it on a 98 Subaru Legacy GT with a 2.5 liter boxer engine, an EJ25. That requires a common polarity on all 4 terminals, but I do have a presentation called Wasted Spark Ignition System, and that I solved the problem of how to create the common polarity on all 4 terminals. It's a little bit kind of a pain, so I'm not too excited about it, but for the old school cars, I also have it on a 1977 Datsun pickup. If you have the cap discharge module, some connections and the diodes, you could probably have it installed in half an hour, and it's so easy. I'd like to see this get into, there's a lot of hot rodders and stuff. I spent 14 non-consecutive years of my life in Japan, and I was living in the era of the real Fast and the Furious before those movies were ever thought of. Watching the old Skyline GTRs when they first came back into production in about 1989 or so. And, you know, when you see one of these cars take off on the line and it can beat a motorcycle off the line, that's a fast-ass car, you know. So I'm kind of a car freak at heart, and I actually look at a lot of these things like a backyard grease monkey. You know, I understand the mechanics of how this interferes with this and causes this and whatever, and that's kind of the way I just kind of grok stuff. But the ignition after that, or possibly before, I don't know. I'll make up my mind pretty soon. I'd like to get back into the battery charging technology and solar charge controllers. This is something that you know, I have over 15,000 people on a waiting list on Tesla through TeslaChargers.com waiting for me to put something out. So I'm not necessarily money motivated. It's just got to feel right, you know. Business is good, but I think it's going to be possibly a 20 amp, 12 volt solar charge controller. It'd be John Bedini's design, but it'll be using silicon carbide MOSFETs, silicon carbide diodes to increase the efficiency. So with a lower voltage VMP on a solar panel, you can get the batteries up to the same level without having such a tight window of this 18.3 volt VMP requirement that we really needed before, because after the losses, then you're able to get the lead acid up to, like, you know, 15.3 volts. Well, you can do it with a lower voltage solar panel with those silicon carbide components. You know, that's why I can see why Mark is excited about it. I'm excited about it, and at Paul's, I'm seeing what they're doing, and already tested out a diode on a little solar charge controller last year, and it made all the difference in the world. So that's the direction I'm going to go with it.
Can I just add?
Yep.
Can I just add, those silicon carbide components they've been a godsend. I mean, they are absolutely phenomenal. And I mean, I know they cost a little bit more, but boy, the performance of those parts is so much greater. It's amazing. We integrated them onto our board. And you might think that's a bad idea, but but we put them on there, and the way they performed is phenomenal.
Well, I mean, they cost a little bit more, but they're still very affordable. I mean, I looked at this. I got a bunch of these little diodes. I don't remember what the rating was, but I used it in a test on a little 3 amp, 12 volt solar charge controller, and using a constant voltage, constant current supply to mimic a solar panel at a certain voltage. I could only get the flooded cell lead acid battery up to about 14.7 volts. And then the regular silicon diode that John Bedini had on that particular circuit it was over 200 degrees Fahrenheit. It was hot. It was about maybe 210, 220. I was like, man, that's wasting, you know, too much. And but any of the silicon diodes are going to be having that kind of loss and are going to get really hot. And as soon as I replaced it with a silicon carbide diode that was literally probably 1/5, 1/6 the size or smaller, it was only maybe 160, 170 degrees. And at the voltage and current that I had moving through that thing, the voltage drop was only in the low 0.2 something volts, like 1/5 of a volt. And you know, it's like a little germanium diode or something, you know. And for the same input from the power supply, mimicking a solar panel, I was getting the battery to like 15.7 or something. So I had to actually bring it down. So, I mean, it's a complete game changer. Those diodes are maybe $1, I don't know, something like that for these tiny ones, because I'm doing a lot lower power levels than what this is for something like that.
I buy 650 volt, 50 amp silicon carbide diodes for $11.
And that's quite a bit higher power level.
So you know, the wattage it handles, I mean, an unheard of price for performance. I mean, literally infinite speed. We're in the renaissance of semiconductors right now. And I've waited 30 years to be here. And now I'm like, you know, pig in mud, man. I'm happy with the transistors. The harder they are to kill, the happier I am. So I haven't yet killed the silicon carbide diode. And that says something, because I put them to the test. For the first time this winter, I actually had to get the fire extinguisher out and put a fire out. So, you know, I'm like a boot camp, you know, Marine Corps boot camp guy. The transistors show up, they're my little army. Who lives, lives, and who dies, dies. And then I have my benchmarks. So they get harder and harder to kill. They get more and more powerful, faster and faster and cheaper. So when you run the actually what you're buying for what you're paying, like I say, it's a renaissance. Now we're in a position to fully be commercially ready, go, because of the renaissance of the commercial semiconductor age. And Aaron, I turned Aaron on to him, and he never looked back. And so that's the way it is. We got the tools we've needed, and they're dirt cheap.
You had a comment, Sky?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, Aaron's, as he mentioned, he's wanting to put his ignition system back into production. And I think that's very, very good timing, perfect timing, because obviously with Aaron's plasma ignition system, if you use a conventional spark plug, the electrode wears out rather quickly, you would say. Am I mistaken? And so Aaron and I have been discussing about producing immortal spark plugs with tungsten electrodes, because my business just invested in a screw machine. So now we can make spark plugs fairly inexpensively, all things considered, with really high quality, immortal tungsten electrodes that can use a plasma ignition system and use it reliably for a very long time. And this is something that I very much look forward to Aaron on debuting possibly as soon as next year, maybe even sooner. It's not that hard to fire up a screw machine and start making plugs.
I'm looking forward to it as well. The design, there's 2 designs already done. We just have to build it and test it. So hopefully that'll happen soon. So many hours in a day, but that's
Right.
to make the plasma ignition practical for the average person. You know, a racer, if you got a plug that lasts a race, I mean, who cares, right? But somebody that wants to drive around, you know, do you want to change a plug maybe every 3,000 miles, 2,000, whatever it happens to be? Not that big of a deal if you have that kind of ignition system. It'd be easier to change a plug, but I want to plug that. I mean, if you had it in a regular car, it'll last longer than your car. If it's in a plasma ignition, it's going to last a long time. So that's the goal.
Right, and what the other thing that I want to do is, right now that Burke engine topology has been pure compression ignition. All the tests have been done using glow plugs, pure compression ignition. I'm really looking forward to see what's possible with the plasma ignition system and see what the differences will be, if any. I suspect that there will be an increase in performance, and one of the things that I would like to do to increase simplicity is get rid of the distributor, get rid of crankshaft position sensors, and use the top of the piston itself, as is described in Nikola Tesla's original patent on the subject, and just have the electrode of the spark plug arc directly to the piston face. And now the ignition timing is controlled exclusively through voltage and Passion's law, breakdown voltage, all that good stuff. So that really increases simplicity and it ensures that timing is always perfect. It ignites at top dead center first time, every time. And so we may be able to burn mixtures of fuel heavily diluted with water. Maybe even start getting into some of the principles that Peter Lindman talked about last year with his atmospheric engine, and really see some interesting stuff and run some interesting experiments. And that's where I'd like to go with Aaron on this moving forward.
Be very interesting if it works.
Yes.
Any questions? Oh, I'll tell you this about the plasma ignition. I know somebody who had a motorcycle in Singapore or Malaysia, and he had that with a quite a big scaled up capacitor in there, more than what you would put in an engine, because it would spark plug might last you. You might make it out of the driveway. He had a tap water from a garden hose putting it in there, and that motorcycle engine ran for about maybe 20 seconds. But it's not practical, but it's showing it's possible. You know, that engine, that ignition can cold start E85 alcohol fuel in sub-freezing temperatures. You can run a gasoline engine on diesel. That's pretty big testimony. Jeff?
I'm curious if you're going to put these things out as a kit where we can assemble them ourselves. I've bought a lot of stuff and smoked a lot of stuff, and some of it I had to reverse engineer to try and figure out what was going on, which I know I never shared it with people, just for myself. But I would love to be able to do the solar circuit, the cap pulsar, the linear amp, and the 4-battery Tesla switch.
I have all those prototypes and the schematics and circuits. I just have to figure, what comes first. The 2 caps in parallel, then series to up the voltage, that kind of thing. So for example, if you don't have enough sun and you have a solar panel putting out X amount of voltage and it's not quite enough for what you need, if you charge 2 caps in parallel, disconnect them, put them in series, you just double the voltage, then you slam that on a battery. So John Bedini had that. Was that the Tesla? That was the Tesla switch. There's a couple different names for it. John produced them for a while, and then he stopped pretty quick because it seems like, I don't know, my take was that it kind of worked a little bit too well. Don't really know. Another variation John had was out in Sandpoint, Idaho here. Somebody had a solar set up at their house, and it was with the test of the boosting type circuit and everything. At midnight, under a full moon, that battery bank was slowly moving up. Is that true?
We developed a machine called the Solar Kick, and it was inductive collapse things. There was a 2-battery system, and we used the solar panels the guy had on the property. We didn't change that, and we put a much bigger inverter on his system, and basically it would charge the batteries from dawn to dusk and put about twice as much power into the system on a day-to-day basis from the same solar panels. They had more power than they'd ever had before, and they never ran the backup generator during the test system. So it proved that, and using the solar panels that he had. So we proved that the amount of energy that you could get into the batteries on a day-to-day basis is extremely variable and can be moved up over 100%. Yeah. So, but that never went into production either.
And one little tidbit about the solar chart, the linear current regulators that just kind of push the voltage up and the current starts dropping down at the top, compared to charging a cap and discharging it, is that the cap discharge method is really more suited. It's an awesome battery charger, but also rejuvenator. The solar charge controllers that were just a linear current that just kind of steadily pushed it up, it can rejuvenate a battery to a point, but it's better to use that on a battery that's already good, and if you always charge it that way, they just stay good. Yeah. Any other questions? So we got 23 minutes. I can start asking you all some questions.
Hold on, I got a couple online.
We were asked about kit forms and so on. And
Oh, kits?
yeah.
Kits with the solar stuff or with the ignition stuff? No, but what kits are you talking about?
I'd like to have a kit. The linear amp that I was talking about is the latest one that John is putting out for the phosphate iron.
Lithium iron phosphate? Now, was it a kit or was it just a solar charger that was limited to about 14.6, 14.7? Okay.
The solar charger to put on my bank of batteries and then hook that to my inverter.
Okay.
And I burn that up.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say about a kit. John wasn't really releasing a kit. We just had the full completed units to buy. So yeah, I'm not sure. Okay.
The solar one that you're talking about,
The series parallel one?
yeah, you're getting ready to do that, and I'd like to get, those.
Oh, just the unit. Yeah. I think the 20 amp, 12 volt solar charge controller is the first one that I'm looking at doing, because I already have it converted to surface mount. I already have the PC board, the whole 9 yards. I just need a little bit of time. As far as the cap charger, I want to put the 2.5 A12, or the little spanker, the extreme model. John called it a spanker because it just spanked a battery and woke it up. The source code disappeared after John died, So, but there's plenty of other methodologies we could go, but you had a comment, Mike?
Well, I was just going to say, one of the plans we have for our motor is to be able to have that available in a kit form. People can take and do final assemblies at home if they like. Make it a little less expensive.
We have a wide variety of generator output. The generator we have, it can be DC, AC, pick your voltage, pick your current form. So I have this thing, I hung my first solar panel in 1981. And I've hung them in the tropics, I've hung them in the Arctic, wind generators, I've done it all, and I hate them both. They're the most biggest boondoggle in energy that has ever happened. They never pay the amount of rare resources it takes, and it's great for Goldman Sachs and it's great for politicians, but it's bad for you and me. So we want to be able to take our machine, an existing solar panel system, and boom, log on. You've got 24/7 real power. You can use your batteries, you can use your inverter. And so the idea is if you got a kilowatt, the average American home uses 24 kilowatt hours a day on average. So depends on where you're at. So if you've got a 24 kilowatt hours around the clock, which there's no solar panel on the planet that will do that. So now I've got a prime mover, that's my own, that's 24/7, and suddenly you have the economics built in where you have that storage. You know, your power use is down all night, you've got your batteries, you can run your washing machine, your refrigerator runs good because you've stored power and you have the big power when you need it. So you can actually just, a 1 kilowatt machine under your present solar panel system. And my idea and one of my joys that I've wanted to do ever since I got into it in the 80s is to make them obsolete, because they're truly an environmental disaster in the making. Lithium batteries. So here's a statistic. If we were to completely convert the country over to battery electric using lithium, first of all, there's not enough lithium. But over the next 70 years, we'd have to dig up more dirt than mankind has done in its entire history. Now you tell me how you're going to do that without D8 cats and diesel. You know, I mean, you can give everybody a shovel and put a gun to them and march them out to dig up your lithium, but that's what it's going to take to make it. It's totally impractical from every scientific viewpoint. The only way to go in the future is energy from space. We're now becoming time knots. We're becoming space knots. We're stepping into fourth dimensional physics. As much as I love Einstein, when other physicists came along, he would have been the first to embrace it. Instead, they've turned him into a religion, a dogma. And so the scientific community is just defending their own dogma like a religion. Well,
They're
we don't have to
corrupted. They're all
change.
just, they're corrupted.
Yeah, we don't have, who cares? We just leave them behind and move forward.
You got a
Hold
comment,
on.
Stephen?
We've got about 3 questions from online.
You want to start with those?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So the first one is, which device should a small community manufacture first?
Great motor.
I would say exactly what we're doing right now. So we call it barnyard manufacturing. We want to, any poor community, drop this in where it's completely simple. You can manufacture it. So I call it electricity to paychecks. What's more important to civilization? Steady paychecks solve about 90% of the world's problems right there. So, guy moves into a community, he gets a franchise. He has a vested interest in his business, right, to take and make motors and sell them to his community. But his first customers are business people. You help them thrive, reduce their costs, be more productive, which means he needs more employers, so he hires more people, they get paychecks. So electricity directly to paychecks, where you're generating wealth that stays in your own community. The next thing you know, Some guy's running a greenhouse. He can compete now. He can compete with Big Ag on his local level. You name it. Energy, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. I suggest everybody read that. It's a CIA document, and I met the man who wrote it.
Can-
The first thing in that page, and it's an evil document about how to keep us down and oppressed. The first thing, there is nothing more important to man than energy. And that's a high-level CIA document. And then it goes on, how do we keep all the energy to us and take it away from everybody else to control the population? It's an eye-opener. It was wrote in the late 70s. The man who wrote it's in his 90s now. And he was involved in that spooky world. And that document, my idea is to write the counter argument for us. Silent weapons for silent wars for us. And our tools are energy. And so read that document. That's what you know what the plan is for you by somebody else. Well, let's write our own silent weapons for silent wars and fight that battle with our own energy.
Real quickly, to the gentleman who asked the question, what technology a small community should invest their limited resources on, I think that depends on their mission profile. That depends on the resources they have abundantly and availability to them. Let's say a community has a small stream with a lot of head and flow. They might want to look into an Archimedes screw, or if they're looking to garner energy. If they are agricultural communities such as the Amish, they have a lot of waste biomass, waste agriculture, a lot of extra, cow and horse and pig manure, things of that nature. They might want to look into, methane gas, be it thermophilic or other methane gas producers using small microorganisms, right? There's a lot of different ways to go about producing energy for a community that's looking to do community scale power. It depends very heavily on their mission profile and the resources they have available to them. And there's a lot of different ways to go about that.
My answer to that exact question would be the RPG technology and the Tesla turbine system.
Nice. Next question online.
Okay.
You brought up Stan Meyer and fuel chemistry. What's your opinion on Brown's gas as fuel?
Brown's gas as fuel is not an ideal fuel. That's why Stan Meyer's ionized nitrogen and mixed it with the HHO output of a cell. And like I mentioned, I think maybe on the first day, if you look at Meyer's, one of his old patents was called an aeration patent. And by the way, he also has a specific patent for creating a synthetic fuel. So a lot of the answers are already there in what he was doing. But anyway, on this aeration patent, exhaust is going out through an exhaust cooler, which he says doubles as a spark arrestor. How is an empty pipe like this going to double as a spark arrestor? What might be in there? But in any case, as it's coming towards the HHO cell, he calls it a mixing valve, but it's obviously a Venturi, so that the exhaust flowing over that through that Venturi is going to pull the water gas out easier, so you can make more HHO with less electricity. It's more efficient, and it also keeps all the different atomic and molecular species created from that HHO separated to keep them from recombining. It's going to join with the +3 charged nitrogen, which was split. That's going to create the NH3 because it's a stronger attractor, so the hydrogen's preferably going to go to that instead of the oxygen. So the key is to prevent the formation of a water molecule once you free up that hydrogen. And like Sky was talking about the function of carbon in a hydrocarbon fuel, the nitrogen is performing the exact same function in an ammonia fuel. So once that is done, then it can be burned with the same type of thermal output as like gasoline, for example, because you want a slow burn that you can actually get the thermal energy out of the so-called HHO, out of the hydrogen, and you can't do it if it's just HHO. And so it's about changing the quality of the gas, not about creating magical quantities of HHO for very little input with magical resonant frequencies that had nothing to do with it. That's my take on it.
Yeah, no, I find it interesting that the patent had a spark arrestor or called it a spark arrestor. I think it had other applications than that. It's been a very long time since we've burned wood and steam trains, thus necessitating a spark arrestor on our prime movers.
Yeah, so So one thing I want to mention about the spark arrestor, so if you've got the exhaust coming out, going through this exhaust cooler that doubles as a spark arrestor, going through the Venturi, mixing with the HHO output, that goes back to the input, and so some of it is exhausted to the environment, some is being recycled, so the ammonia condenses and condenses and condenses, and that's
It's
your...
smart EGR. It's an intelligent way to do EGR that actually reclaims a lot of the waste heat and otherwise would be wasted chemistry. It's a good way to exploit that phenomenon, that chemical process.
And it's my belief, and this is speculation, that the spark arrestor was something like a hot nickel catalyst, like nickel wool or something was shoved in there, because on a hot nickel catalyst, when a nickel is heated up like that, molecular nitrogen right out of the air will ionize on contact of that hot nickel catalyst, and you have ionized atomic +3 charged
It's
nitrogen.
even easier than that. He nickel plated it.
It's possible. But would that be a spark arrestor?
Well, if it's looping back and forth, it would act as a spark arrestor, but I think he just inserted that into the patent because he could get as many claims as possible, because why not? But
Russell Bork was talking about nitrogen or hydrogen, burning super fast and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff in the Bork engine documentary documents. And when you look at all that, everything Stan Myers did was to slow down that burn. So again, read the Bork engine documentary.
yeah, the Russell Burke was pretty interesting. He was under the impression that conventional engines were burning the carbon and not the hydrogen. That's not true, but what we do know is that if you burn the fuel faster, you get a lot more energy out of it for the same given amount of fuel that you do burn because of Boyle's law. That being said, obviously with HHO generators, they're basically what Stan Meyer and many other people have done is they've taken what the big oil corporations do with steam cracking and they downscaled it to fit under the hood. Now, this is called refinery gain. Every large petrochemical refinery that refines oil does this. So they're taking steam, water, and they're shooting it into heavyweight hydrocarbons. And these hydrocarbons at high temperatures and at high pressures using catalysts will basically rip the hydrogen from the oxygen, and it will bond with the hydrogen and will bond with the carbon, right? The extra hydrogen will bond with the extra carbon and it'll form lighter weight hydrocarbons. And this creates a process called refinery gain. For every 1 barrel of oil that goes into a refinery, 4 barrels of product come out. And that's because they are, by shortening up the chains, they're literally diluting the oil with water, but they're bonding it, they're ripping the water apart and bonding the extra hydrogen from the water to the extra heavyweight hydrocarbons to form lightweight hydrocarbons. So they're multiplying their amount of hydrocarbons by bonding it with water chemically and catalytically to get more hydrocarbons out, more mass of hydrocarbons out, not just volume, but they get more mass of hydrocarbons out than what they put in through these processes. And we can take this process and we can downscale it to fit it underneath the hood of a truck now.
And when Sky's mentioning burning the gas faster with the plasma ignition, the entire combustion process is absolutely speeded up. So
The more isochoric you make your engine, the more efficient it will be, all other factors being equal.
any comments, Mark?
I'm in a different area.
Any other online questions?
Yeah. Do you know of anything else that stimulates cartilage growth? And
There is a therapy that I've done for years that I've totally rebuilt my knees, spine, neck. I used to have carpal tunnel so bad in my wrist, my wife had to zip my pants up for me. 2 treatments, completely cured for years, and it's called prolotherapy. It's an AMA approved process, and what it is, it's an immunosystem stimulant. It irritates your immune system. So when you have bad knees and bad cartilage, it's a low blood supply tissue. So when you get injuries, what happens is when it tries to heal, the capillaries don't regrow. So it's this process called angiogenesis. They inject that, they take dextrose and ozone mixed with sterile water, and they inject it right down in your tendons and your cartilage. And that stimulates your immune system to rebuild the capillaries, which delivers oxygen and nutrients. And I have the x-rays of my left foot. I broke it in 1994 on a dog mushing adventure. And I broke it bad. Well, 20 years later, it started to dog me. So I go to the local, arthritis center. They x-ray it. I'm standing there because I got a limp. I could not walk without limping. So I'm standing there, I'm telling the doctor I'm having a hard time walking. It's really causing me grief. I need to get out and walk every day. And he's looking at my x-rays. He just turned around and said to me, I suggest you take up swimming. All I can do is prescribe you pain medicine and anti-inflammatories. So I said, no thanks, got my x-ray, went to my prolotherapist. He's looking at my foot and he goes, you see this bone right here? I said, yeah. He goes, that's actually 2 bones because the cartilage is so gone that it looks like 1 bone on the x-ray. And I said, anything you can do? And he says, I'll fix you right up.
Well, Stephen, you had a question?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so, this is the question. So, everybody here has seen me. This was like 8 years ago when I did this 2 treatments. You see me walking with a limp, I have the x-rays to prove that cartilage is regrown.
Also known as prolozone.
Prolozone and prolotherapy.
And I know multiple people have benefited from it. And one thing real quick is for cartilage, that type of tissue type, is go online, look for the Nogier frequencies, Dr. Paul Nogier, Nogier, and he developed a frequency set where it was based on the embryologic origin of tissue. So as everything in the body is ecto, meso, or endoderm tissue, the one that's specific to cartilage, you can take infrared and red light, LEDs, pulse them at that frequency for the cartilage tissue, and it can help stimulate the repair. So it'd be actually synergistic with prolozone. Next question.
For all of us that are playing with the Bedini circuit, did you and Mike and you start out with the 21194 transistor and then move to the silicon carbide FETs?
MJL 21194.
That's what I meant. Yeah, MJL 21194.
Never did use that one.
Huh? You
Yeah,
never used
we
that
never
one?
used that.
Okay, you
Well,
always used that.
Here's the deal. John's
And-
schoolgirl transistor is from the dark ages of transistors. It's a bipolar transistor, low voltage. And for that 1-cylinder schoolgirl, it was fine. Try to run it at 24 volts, I blew up lots of them, right? So the deal is, like I was saying, it's the past. Get over it. Throw that transistor away, it did its thing, and go to the power MOSFETs and voltage. And I mean, that schoolgirl motor has potential. When you get up 256 times the magnetism that the schoolgirl motor, what kind of RPMs do you think it's going to reach? 256 times. I mean, it's incredible potential. So now you'll be able to carry a load, you'll be able to do experiments. But join the modern golden age of power transistors. I can't say that enough.
You
So-
won't be sad.
You
did.
won't be sad, yeah. So I guess that's for everybody who works with
Ask
those.
Mike.
Yeah.
He was blowing lots of stuff out. Mike, try this one.
So
Way happier.
a request, when you do put out the kit, could you separate the battery swapper into a separate package for,
Aaron and I are talking about actually doing that.
because
as
that's a
product.
sweet circuit, yeah.
But my deal is go bleed for a while, SG motor guys. You know, I want to see people figure it out on their own. I want to see some mind hurt and brain hurt, right? Because that's the only way you learn, right?
And my
And to
community
me-
is waiting, though.
Yeah, well, to me is,
What-
there's a whole new generation of young kids, and I just want people to step beyond their training, their dumbed-down education, and find their native intelligence that they were born with, and take on the challenge, man. Like Mike said, never give up. I
Yeah.
tell you, when Mike showed up at my office years ago and said, we're friends of John, and what did I tell you? I said, I'll give you some circuits, but you got to build your own electronics. And they did. And they, they have lots of dead soldiers to prove it. Now, see all that stuff there? They built that all on their own. Didn't know a damn thing about electronics, but they learned, they did it. They
Mike
blew
had a
stuff
comment
up.
on that?
No, it's just a process that if you saw, several years ago, I brought several of the boards up that we had used, the graduation that we had. I mean, we went from these little Mickey Mouse things to what we have now. I mean, it's like we never quit trying to improve and never quit learning about it. And in reading and, going through the different publications like that we could get, like John's book and other things, that we were able to, gradually come up with this. It's not like that just happened magically overnight. I mean, Paul gave us those circuits, and we made the circuit, and it still wasn't doing what we wanted to do. Yeah. But there was some great stuff on there, and so we integrated stuff from Paul's circuit, from the stuff that is in John Bedini's books, and wild ideas of our own, and it worked.
Last question, then we'll
Sure.
take a break.
Yeah, okay, so who came up with the 3-minute battery switch
You had a question?
time? You just guys tried things over and over and,
The batteries,
nice.
It's
Nice.
like, oh,
That's
too
good.
far. Oh, not far enough.
Okay, yeah, we'll take one more question, then we'll take a 5-minute break and get,
I was just curious, Mike, if you had an estimate on the retail price of your generator?
At this point, I don't have an accurate what it'll be.
Oh, okay.
It'll be probably less than 150,000. But
Okay, that narrows it a little bit.
Look at it this way, highly competitive with the solar industry.
it'll be very competitive with solar.
Okay.
And I mean, I know that because I sell solar on the side, and I know what it costs.
Good.
okay.
Okay.
Paul, Sky, Mark, Mike, thank you, everybody.